Hello, I'm Jennifer Firestein, Associate State Director for AARP Michigan, and welcome to our virtual seminar, Ignite Your Vitality. You just saw the first of several vibrant older adults and what it looks like to be vibrant and live a vibrant life. You'll hear from others on how to cultivate vitality and how to lead a vibrant life. So this is an exciting workshop and conversation today, and I'll be talking with renowned experts on vitality. You'll not only hear the research behind this, but the stories of how to lead a vibrant life and enhance your vitality. What's great is that you also get to ask your questions live. So please add them in the comment section and we'll be sure to answer them. My first guest, I had the opportunity to hear speak at a conference in Las Vegas recently. He was dynamic, and I was thrilled that he agreed to share his knowledge and expertise with us today. Dr. Alan Mishra is an adjunct clinical associate professor of orthopedic surgery at the Menlo Medical Clinic at Stanford University's Medical Center. He's also the founder of VitalityExplorers.com and a pioneering platelet-rich plasma researcher. His research has been published in elite medical journals and also featured on the front page of the New York Times. He also works with a variety of institutions to optimize vitality and has presented on the subject of vitality at Stanford University, elite conferences, the University of Cambridge, and many more places. His book, Dare to be Vital, serves as the required text for a vitality course for medical students. Dr. Mishra completed his undergraduate and medical studies at the University of Michigan, and he also did his residency in Michigan and then finished his training with a fellowship in sports medicine at Stanford University. Dr. Mishra also enjoys training for triathlons, and here's a fun fact, has cashed in multiple times at the World Series of Poker. Dr. Mishra, it's a delight to have you here today.
Wow, Jennifer, that's so awesome. It was great to meet you in Vegas, and I am delighted to be here, especially for Michigan. And I want to start with a story and maybe share a little bit of a slideshow for a few minutes, then we can have a conversation about some of the work I've been doing with Vitality Explorers. But thank you, and thank AARP for the opportunity to be here today and to try to ignite the vitality of the audience. And so let's start with this little picture that comes from the time of COVID. And it's actually about 3 years ago when this blue-handled shovel assaulted me. And that assault occurred when I had to travel back to East Lansing and Okemos, Michigan, where I'm from originally, a proud Michigander. But I traveled back during COVID, unfortunately, for the death of a close family member that was unexpected. And that time was that weekend that I came back to Michigan, and specifically East Lansing and Okemos, was a terrible weekend because of the loss of a life of an amazing person who had dedicated her life to the service of others. But it was actually an interestingly nice weekend because I got to see a lot of my family I hadn't seen and many old friends because COVID had restricted us from traveling. But I have to admit, when I traveled from San Francisco through Detroit back to Okemos and East Lansing, the flight out was just stuffed with my head was stuffed with things that were going wrong in my life. I was frustrated with COVID. I was frustrated with the travel. I couldn't even rent a car at Detroit Metro. The only way to get there was to take a bus through Ann Arbor to East Lansing. And interestingly, on the way back, my travel back was filled with joy. But when my brother picked me up and we got to the funeral, and I made it with not too much time remaining before the service, this blue-handed shovel was leaning up against this tree. And I took a picture of it. And who takes a picture at a funeral? You don't really want to remember it. But this shovel reminded me of all the funerals that I've been to. And unfortunately, I've been to too many. My first was my mom's when I was just 9, and my last will be my own. In between, I've been to many other funerals. But what I wanted to convey to people today is how important this moment was in my life in terms of a pivot to try to understand why this shovel was screaming at me. It was yelling at me to remember that we don't know when the shovel will be for us. We do not know when our last best day will be. And we can pivot. We can try to spend whatever time we have left to serve other people, to become better versions of ourselves, to strive to solve difficult problems, and today to try to ignite our vitality. So I share that story in the context of some of this work I've done with Vitality Explorers, and we can flip to the next slide now. This is a delight to be here, but also to talk about some of the work that I've been doing and how I want to be able to help people here during this webinar with AARP, and specifically the Michigan chapter of AARP and anybody else who's listening. But you can see some of the work that I've been doing on vitalityexplorers.substack.com, or you can check out this QR code. I think everybody's going to be able to download this presentation if they want. We can flip to the next slide here. But I have one take-home message, one specific thing that I want everybody to remember and everybody to do. And you can just whisper it to yourself, okay? I want you to say to yourself that you're a hero. And by the way, if you're still alive, which I hope everybody who's listening to this is, you're vital. Now, there may be a scale of vitality. You may be on the low or you may be the high end of vitality, but you are vital to some degree. And I have something that I want you to do when you finish listening to this webinar. I want you to look in the mirror, in your car, in your bathroom. Just stare at yourself in the mirror for a second and do one thing. And that is to bet on yourself. Bet on yourself to be a hero of your own journey. And when you do that, when you choose to be the hero of your own life's journey, and you say to yourself you're vital and that you're going to bet on yourself, I'm going to provide a guarantee here. I guess you can email me if it doesn't work, but the nanosecond you bet on yourself, your vitality soars. Now, I want you to do those two things. And if you don't remember to do anything else, that's it. But now we want to talk, if we move to the next slide, about specific actionable things. It's important to bet on yourself. I think it's a fundamental thing that we need to talk about if we want to be our most vital selves. But how do we get there? What are the specific actionable things that we can do to enhance our vitality? That's what my Vitality Explorer work is all about. And I have something called the Vitality Blueprint, which I've used for a lot of the courses I've taught at Stanford. And those include things like sleep, closeness, discipline, service, hope, fitness, time, and purpose. But we have a limited amount of time. So what I want to do is go through 4 specific things that you can do to enhance your vitality, because each one of you might be good at one or the other. But over the next 4 or 5 minutes, we're not going to spend too much time. Then Jennifer and I are going to have a conversation and try to answer your questions. But we're going to start with optimizing time. And you can flip to the next slide here. So there's a lot of things you can talk to about how to optimize your time, but here is an exercise that I've used over and over again that I want everybody to think about. Now, when we're first, filming this or broadcasting this, it's February 29th, 2024. So if you think ahead on 1 million seconds, okay, which is about 12 days, if you circle Monday, March 11th on the calendar, that's 11 days from now, or 12 days, 11 and a half days, right? That's about 1 million seconds. And here's what I want you to try to do. Each one of us has some things that we could work on, right? But if you go to the next slide here, if you think about what could you do with your next 1 million seconds? I don't want you to create a to-do list. I don't want you to think about it. And by the way, when I do this in person, I hand out a little card called the 1 million second challenge card. All right, but you have access to this, or you can create it on a little piece of paper. But the idea is to reduce the things that you want to have done in 11 days or 12 days or about 1 million seconds to no more than 3. And the reason I do that is we have 1 million things we might want to do, but what are the 3 most important? What are the 3 most important things you could potentially do, or even what's the most important thing you could do for yourself to enhance your vitality? I'm going to give you some suggestions in a couple minutes here. But the better we manage our time, the better we manage our minds. And that's not my opinion. Everything we do with Vitality Explorers is based on peer-reviewed, published data. And I could spend hours beating up people with data, but I just want to give people today some specific actionable things. We can go on to the next slide. Okay, so we've talked about betting on yourself and being a hero of your own journey. We've talked a little bit about optimizing time and the 1 million second challenge, but let's talk about something I know a lot about as an orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist, and that is stockpiling health. Now, a lot of people talk about stockpiling wealth, but this is a concept that I've been working on for almost a decade now, and that is to stockpile health. And one thing that's really important in the concept of stockpiling health is your muscle. And your muscle matters. Let me give you 2 quick pieces of data. I see a lot of people with knee osteoarthritis and try to get them to ride the bike or strengthen their legs. And They're not particularly afraid of knee arthritis, maybe a knee replacement. But here's two things that muscle makes better. And this is the one where leg power predicts brain power. And this was a group of, it was all women between 50 and 60. And this researcher in the United Kingdom looked at the number one or two things that are associated with increasing risk of dementia over 10 years. And it's not surprising that with each succeeding year, there was a higher risk. But this was done in twins. This was an excellent study, over 400 people over a decade. And she measured their leg strength each year. And guess what? Their leg strength was a protective component against dementia. So she actually looked at their dementia scores, MRIs. But what that tells me is that muscle matters if you want to decrease your risk of early onset dementia. And the next one is even more important, is that muscle smashes cancer. Okay, multiple papers that show that the more muscle you have, the less you have. You can potentially prevent cancer or prevent cancer progression. So when you're stockpiling health, think about doing things like doing some resistive exercises. We'll talk more about it in the question and answer. Let's move on to the next slide. And this is one that's so crucial in the post-COVID world, right? So we need to cultivate closeness as a third suggestion in terms of what you could put on your to-do list over the next 11 days or a million seconds. And one of the most important components of cultivating closeness, I think, is just focusing on the positive people in your life. And this is a picture of about three of my buddies who are none of us are good golfers. I don't want to rat them out or me. We're all mediocre golfers, but boy, do we have a good time when we go out and play golf. And they are some of the most positive people on the planet that I just love spending time with. Okay. And the reality is the data about loneliness is staggering in terms of your longevity and your vitality. It's interesting to note, which I didn't know a few years ago, is that loneliness is a worse predictor of mortality than obesity or smoking. And especially after COVID, we need to cultivate closeness. So if we can flip to the next slide, and everybody gets to pull out their phone right now. And this is something that takes 99 seconds or less. I'm going to actually look at the clock here. Maybe it's a minute or two. But if you pull out your phone and you just think of three people that maybe you haven't seen in a few weeks or even a few months, or maybe it's a few years, and you're not going to ask for a favor. You're just going to say, hello, how you doing? I've been thinking about you today. And if you text three people now in the next minute or so, see what happens over the next hour or the next day. Again, this isn't, I wish this was my idea. The 99-second part of it's my idea, but there's data that suggests that when you reach out to people, especially people you haven't seen in a while, and reconnect with them, your overall well-being and theirs actually goes up significantly. So in 99 seconds, which is almost cost-free, 3 text messages, you have a chance to improve yours and somebody else's vitality. So let's move to the final slide, and then we can talk a little bit about what we've been talking about overall. So we talked, again, number one thing to think about is to bet on yourself as the hero of your own journey. Remember, you're vital. To optimize your time, to work on stockpiling health, especially your muscular health, and then to cultivate closeness, and then to finish is to pinpoint your peak purpose. Now, you can have multiple purposes over your lifetime. It's your most important modifiable vitality asset, by the way. You get to choose that, or somebody else might choose it for you. And it can be different. For instance, in my 20s, my primary purpose was just to get through medical school, get through my orthopedic surgery training and become a surgeon. And over time, you become a father, or you become a husband, a wife, a spouse. You have other community responsibilities. And then as you transition in life, maybe into retirement, or maybe through travel or moving, or through relationship changes, you get to potentially reset your purpose. But ask yourself these questions as you're trying to figure out what your peak purpose is that what are you willing to suffer for? Because sometimes the best purposes require a little suffering. Obviously, what brings you joy, and then bringing it full circle. What would you do if you dreamed greatly with whatever you have until that shovel is for you? So we can stop the slides, and I'm sure Jennifer has a few questions for me, but what I've kind of put together there is sort of the lightning round of how to ignite your vitality. No pun intended. Maybe the lightning is what sparks vitality. But what questions do you, Jennifer, or anybody else have about that sort of concepts that we went through?
I would like to pull up that slide again of the vitality blueprint. So can we pull that up a second? Because I want to go over that, because I think that's really interesting. So when we look at that vitality blueprint, Whoops, we got to go
Further up
back.
at the
Yeah,
beginning. Yeah, one more, I think.
close. One more.
There you
There
go.
we go. All right. So when you look at this, the time and the purpose, how do those go together then?
Yes, great question. So I used to start with trying to teach people how to identify their purpose. And now what I do is start with teaching people how to optimize their time. And here's why. I think your purpose is a function of how you spend your time and how you spend your energy. And I've come up with kind of a crazy equation. I was a little bit of a math geek in a former or a future life. But I think your purpose is equals your time multiplied by your energy squared. Okay. So you may have a little bit amount of time that you can dedicate to something, but if you bring your absolute top level energy, that's a higher percentage of your purpose. And if you want to do, one of the things we do is a purpose identification sort of week. How do you spend your time? Just literally write down how you spend your time and how much energy you bring to each part of that week. And you'll start to identify what your purpose is. And then you can sort of adjust from there.
It's interesting because especially when people retire, they lose that sense of purpose. Or when they go through transitions like becoming an empty nester and all of a sudden the kids are gone and they go, well, what is my purpose now that I'm not raising my kids anymore, or I've retired from my job and I don't have the title anymore? Because society's biggest question, of course, is so what do you do, right? What do you do when you don't have the what do I do? So when people lose that sense of purpose, what happens, and what kind of science is behind that?
So if you lose your sense of purpose, it is probably right next to closeness in terms of the number one or two things. We often think of like our cholesterol or our blood sugar or our blood pressure as being really, really important for our overall well-being. But how you spend your time, how you, whether you know your purpose or not, and who you spend your time with are as or more important. So I have a sort of funny thing that I talk about is some guy said, I'm a pip. And I'm like, what's that? What's a pip? When they ask him what was he doing in retirement, he goes, well, I'm a previously important person. And so I think there's a lot of people who identify their job as who they are, but that's not true. And I think what we have in our society, mainly here in the United States that I'm aware of, we have a massive, untapped, huge resource of people with deep experience. And I'm working on what I call a gig economy for people who are 50 plus. Maybe you don't want to work 40 hours a week, but you have massive, massive value for the next generation. And part of it I know because I do some vitality work. I do a lot of vitality work with people between 18 and 30 or 35. And my 23-year-old daughter said, well, what, I asked her, I said, why do these people want to talk to you? And they said, well, you're not their daddy. I'm like, okay. So there's a lot of people out there who need, I don't like to call it senior, but shall we call a seasoned mentor. Okay. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I think there's different things that people could do, but don't give up on whatever you enjoy doing or were good at or want to be good at, or also could be good at. Okay. I didn't start doing any of this vitality stuff until after I got my little AARP card in the thing. So that was a seminal moment. And I don't know how much time we have, but I'll tell that quick story, Jennifer. I got back from a vacation and AARP sent me their little red card. And I didn't want to start. I didn't want to believe it. Okay. But what I did is I looked up on the Social Security website and I was 50 plus a few days. And it turned out that I would be 82 years old if I lived an average amount of time. I gave myself a couple extra years and realized that 33 or 34 years is almost exactly 1 billion seconds. So that's what I started with. I started with what I call the billion-second challenge. And that's when I became maniacal about how I spent my time and how to optimize my time. So if I leave that final message back to where the number one thing I want everybody to do is to bet on themselves, to be a hero of their own journey. And I am, delighted to have been part of this and will be willing to answer any other questions you or the audience has.
So, Dr. Mishra, as a doctor, you've seen the vast spectrum of what people look like when they age. What does vitality look like to you when you see it in older adults?
That's a great question, Jennifer. I don't even remember if we talked about this one before, but I have been at the same place, the Menlo Medical Clinic within the Stanford system for, I don't want to say this, 25 years. Okay, so I have a lot of patients that I've seen go from their 20s, 30s, 40s to their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's a lot of what my observational versions of this. I see some people who are aging well, and I see people who are not. And that gets to my working definition of vitality. Okay. And I call it Vitality Explorers on purpose because it's going to be a forever journey for me to get better at it. But this is why I say working, is that I want to modify it later. But vitality is purposeful, energetic, and connected living. So those people who really are vital at any stage, 18 or 85, have some connection to what they want to do on this planet, why they are here. They are also energetic in any way, shape they can be. That could be even if you're dying something like ALS or cancer or something else. Live your most vital life for as long as you can. And the final one, remember, take that 99-second challenge and connect with people. Because at the end of life, for sure, it's the people in your relationships that are more important than your possessions.
And is vitality more of a mental mindset more than a physical, like the anatomy of being healthy?
So I've struggled with this one, Jennifer, because I started off with just looking for a physical biomarker for vitality. And then I had this sense that it was 4 pillars: physical, mental, social, and spiritual. And now it's evolved into sort of what I call the vitality wheel. Physical, your physical well-being is connected to your mental well-being, is connected to your social and spiritual well-being. Sleep is probably the best example of that. If you sleep well, you wake up in a better mood, you wake up better able to maybe go work out. But I think they're all interconnected, your physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being, to support your overall sense of vitality.
And we have a question from Dennis. He wants to know, because we were talking about purpose, what happens if you lose your purpose? What if you struggle finding it? So what's a good resource to cultivate that?
So this is something that I spend a long time and at the end of my courses teaching people how to do, because I got accused actually of purpose shaming people. I don't want to accuse of purpose shaming people and not knowing what they're doing. But one thing that I have people do is literally to answer some of these questions in a journal. And they're hard questions. What are you willing to suffer for? What brings you joy? What do people tell you you're good at? What do you miss? And then suspending your disbelief, silencing the voice of judgment in your head that you could do something crazy after age 50, okay? Or even at 18. So, because some of the people I work with are young. I work with sort of a bipolar distribution of people, 50 plus and 18 to 30. And so they struggle, the 18 to 30-year-olds struggle in a different way. And each one of them has something in common now. So if you're really, really struggling with your purpose, here's one specific suggestion. Find some way to serve somebody in need, okay? Because if you get out of your own head and you say, look, here, I'm pretty good at stacking boxes. I'm pretty good at organizing. I'm pretty good at doing whatever it is. Find some organization or find some person that you can serve, and that might be the gateway to your purpose.
When you see people, and we were talking about what it looks like, there's this certain spark that they have, right? They just have that something that you can't quite pinpoint, that they're just leading a very vibrant life. And part of this webinar and workshop that we did is we interviewed some older adults who lead very vibrant lives. And so we interviewed them and asked them a question like, what does it mean to you? What does vitality look like to you? How do you cultivate a vibrant life? So Dr. Mishra, we are going to show one of those first videos next. And I'm so appreciative that you came on to talk. You'll be back on. We aren't done with you just yet, because you'll come on at the end of the show today and share your final thoughts and some of your takeaways. So to our viewers, if you have more questions for Dr. Mishra, please post them in the comment section and we will get back to them at the end of the show when Dr. Mishra comes back on. So thank you for this great information, and we'll have more to share with you. But we're going to show our first video of our vibrant older adult, Shelly. So here you go.
The state of being strong and active, present in all living things, the capacity to live, grow, and develop. Now, Shelley's answer is, I agree with all of those. Let me add, to be vital, bring on the energy and bring on the attitude, especially in these days. Being vital is being alive. I'd like to think we only have one shot at it. So if we can bring on life as though we only have the one shot, I'm going to be vital in my choices. There are lows in life. We'll consider those challenges. There are highs in life. We'll consider those, hold on to them and inspire for others. And perhaps one can choose to be vital. Choices is my word for the year. So I'm going to choose to be vital.
So that's Shelley Irwin, and she's just a phenomenal TV show host, radio show host. She is a very vibrant triathlete, and so we just thank Shelley Irwin for sharing her views on vitality. Our next presenter is Kevin DeVries. Kevin is the founder of True Summit LLC, a visionary leader who models the spirit of a champion. Born to immigrant parents, Kevin's journey has taken him to the ends of the earth as an extreme explorer. He's showcased his talent, creativity, and entrepreneurial skills as an award-winning film producer. His resilience and determination as a cardiac arrest survivor are truly inspiring, and his captivating storytelling makes him an exceptional speaker. As an extreme explorer, acclaimed producer, author, and inspirational speaker, Kevin impacts hundreds of thousands of people each year. And his autobiography, The Mountains Within, A Journey into Uncharted Realms, will be published in 2025. His story of survival helps individuals and organizations achieve peak performance through well-being. Let's take a closer look at Kevin's remarkable journey in this video.
So here's the thing. I'm not the greatest explorer that ever lived. I have not summited Mount Everest. I hold no world records. There are no mountains named after me. After a lifetime of exploration in the land of the living and the dead, I'm not here to impress you with my success. I'm here to make an impact through my successful failures. Success tells us what we can do. Failure teaches us who we are. And I have failed. A lot. But I never lost because I never stopped learning. And here's what I've learned. The greatest achievement is not a summit. The greatest achievement is any space where heightened awareness, belief, and connection lead to well-being. You can't find that space on any map. It only exists at a higher level of human consciousness. It's a space we call the True Summit. In this space, the greatest discoveries are what we find while we're searching for something else. I search for the greatest treasures in the world to discover we externalize through adventure whatever we can't internalize through awareness. I climbed 5 of the 7 continental summits, skied to the North Pole, climbed the Everest region, created, scaled, and sold companies. I even lived on a golf course with $1 million net worth. I survived bankruptcy, 2 divorces. I lived out of a vehicle for 5 years from untreated trauma. I straddled 2 dimensions in a near-death, out-of-body experience with no heartbeat for 15 minutes to finally comprehend it's never been about me. It's about us. Like any extreme expedition, we journey together or we die alone. You can make a successful living alone, but it takes all of us working together to live a significant life. I was sent back from the dead to wake those who live. The time of shattered stories and wounded wastelands must end. The echoes of our past are summoning us to a future without fear. We're not criminals and prisoners of our past. We're climbers and patients of our present future. Life is about what we want to become more than what's been done to us. Pain actually empowers us to feel so we can heal. And sometimes we have to crawl down to the lowest cave to become well enough to climb the highest mountain, because nothing heals in thin air. Joseph Campbell said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." Enter that cave, reclaim your well-being, and return home to your true self as one who has conquered the mountains within. Because here's the thing. If you don't know who you are, you will always be defined by what you do. Know yourself so well that you work well. Own your story and offer it to your organization as strength. Listen to your life to hear the tale that it's telling. It's telling you the greatest journey is within. This is where you find your why. This is where awareness and belief and connection begin. It's not about climbing Everest. It's about finding the strength not to summit, to find the true summit within. By going in, you help others get out. We need all of you to become all of us. Our time has not come. Our mission is not complete. Join me on this journey of well-being. Become the people your organization needs at TrueSummit.llc today.
So I'm delighted that we have Kevin on our webinar today and get to hear a little bit more about his backstory. And there's a lot to dig out from that, but we're going to first talk just, with Kevin one-on-one. And if you have questions, Kevin, I know that our viewers are very interested in learning more about your story. So first, let's talk about your near-death experience. You talked about the lows and the highs, and life is the journey of walking those highs and lows. So let's first talk about that near-death experience and how it impacted your views on vitality with getting a second chance in life.
Yeah, so I suppose the irony was it happened while I was doing vitality. I was running. Thought it was going to be just a normal 10K route. I was training for the half marathon in Grand Rapids that fall. It was September of 2019, and didn't really feel any different than I did in any run. Had no premonition. There was no prescient moment where I thought, wow, something's going to happen. It was just kind of one of those surreal events where you're doing something and you're in ordinary time and you're in this dimension. And then the next thing you know, you're looking at your body. It's down on the trail, and you're exiting that skin suit, if you will, and you're going into another space, another dimension. So you don't come back from those things the same. There's a lot of spiritual things that happen in that moment. There was a lot of surrealness that happened in that moment. There's all kinds of stuff on YouTube if people are fascinated with near-death experiences. There was communication that was going on. There was a divine encounter. But suffice to say that through that, my biggest takeaway was, whether you believe in oblivion, which a lot of people do after death, that this is it, it's one life. And gosh, if that's the case, there's not a lot of hope in that. But if you happen to believe that there is an eternity, that there's an afterlife, then there is greater hope. But in either case, whether you believe in oblivion or eternity, this is really the only opportunity we have to do good. Because if you're going to go into eternity, there's nothing, it's all good, right? So if you're going to live a vital life, if you're going to make an impact on people, if you're going to light a fire and be some type of luminous type person that gives energy to other people, that gives hope to other people, that becomes a hope dealer, if you will, it's best that you have a larger story, a larger context to live in. So I don't really have the luxury of debating that point anymore, because I experienced something, and I know that there's all kinds of neurological explanations for this. I've read all the critics. Your brain is creating this imaginary universe because your heart has stopped beating, and so it's trying to figure out what's going on, and so it's projecting this movie screen in front of you, and it's creating all these characters and all this interaction. I'm a pretty creative guy. I'm pretty imaginative, but I could not recreate what happened in those moments. And it was about 15 minutes. Which is really pushing the envelope. Some bystanders happened to be driving by. I happened to be 10 minutes behind schedule because I wandered through a graveyard. I met someone all dressed in white that then reappeared when I was actually in the next dimension. These people stopped. They were behind schedule for a number of different reasons. They happened to be nurses and nurse practitioners that happened to work in the ER, that happened to be driving by that day. It just so happened that it was 10 minutes from darkness. I just happened to fall on part of the trail that was visible to the road. They worked on me for 10, 12 minutes. Nobody knows how long I was dead before they found me, but I was discolored enough that they stopped. And so after everything went dramatically wrong, everything went dramatically right, which we've seen a couple of instances of that, from the Buffalo Bills player to LeBron James' son, where there's these athletes that are in their prime and it looks like a thunderbolt just hit them on a clear day and they're gone. And unless you defibrillate them, unless you shock them back to life, electrical problems like I had, which was different than a heart attack, that's plumbing, if you will. I had an electrical issue. It's going to be your last day. So they say very few people. The guy that picked me up, I was able to meet him months later after we were having some type of award ceremony because they saved so few of us. It was like 3 or 4 of us the whole year that they had saved from cardiac arrest because they almost always get there too late. You've got precious minutes. He said something, and it's in the video. I actually embedded it in their language, but he said, it's kind of weird. Every once in a while we come across people like you. Most of the time you're already gone. There's nothing we can do. But you went somewhere. And I don't know what his belief system is, but this is a guy just casually commenting on, okay, he's a paramedic. He's been doing it for several years. He's seen a lot of stuff. He's like, I would pick up people like you. In his own words, he said, you were straddling 2 dimensions. You went somewhere. That was pretty obvious because you're not all here. And wherever you went, you're not all there either. You're straddling in between these 2 dimensions. So I think when we talk about vitality, when we talk about having purpose, what story we're living, what story we're writing, I think it's really critical that we somehow grasp that there's a bigger story going on. And there's a bigger worldview, and there's things out there that we can't see, that we cannot comprehend in this dimension, because if we were to even think that we could comprehend them, we might explode into a million particles. There's intelligence, there's light, there is never-ending vitality, like resurrection type vitality that's on the other side that we don't have the bandwidth to comprehend. And I think that the powers of the universe are very kind to us to give these things in little tidbits like I had, because to comprehend it all or to even begin to wade into that deep pool is overwhelming. So, in some ways I became more patient. I'm holding on to things more loosely now as a result, but in other ways I've become more impatient because I see that the mass of humanity, kind of like Thoreau always said, the mass of humanity or the mass of mankind leads lives of quiet desperation. And it just seems to me like there's a lot of people that are just absorbed with stories that don't mean anything in the end. We're just consumed with stuff that it's almost like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It doesn't really matter in the end. What matters in the end? Well, it depends on your worldview perspective. Maybe it has a lot more to do with preparing for the next dimension. And to the extent that you do that in this dimension, I think will provide a very purposeful, vital, and meaningful life.
Kevin, I love that you said whether you believe in oblivion or you believe in eternity, like this is your one shot. You have one life to live. So how have you changed as far as do you feel like you've just got to get everything done that you possibly can and you're working and just going faster and faster because of the fact that time is of the essence?
Yeah, it's not, I don't like the word driven anymore. Passionate, I like much better. And you didn't use that word, but I used to use that word to describe myself. And I don't really like that. That sounds like there's something pushing you, right? Rather than being inspired or being led. So I think for me, it's just coming to grips with, is what I'm doing really going to matter in the long run? Like, it's less about your resume. It's more about your obituary. It's less about making a living. It's more about having a significant life, leaving a legacy, things that really matter. So yeah, it's reshaped, and towards the end of that 15-minute out of body near-death experience, where I literally didn't have a heartbeat for up to 15 minutes, the words that came to me are eerily similar to many other near-death experiences. It's a cottage industry now. You can buy books of this stuff. There's movies. There was just a movie that was in the theater like a couple of weeks ago that was a compilation of these near-death stories, very similar to mine. They're above the ambulance, they're out of their body, that whole thing, divine encounters. But we all seem to have the same message, at least the ones of us that are being sent back. And it's usually something along the lines of, yeah, your mission is not complete. Your time has not come. And I'll remember those words till the day I die. And I spoke those words into a phone within 48 hours. It took about 48 hours to get my mind back, because when you're deprived of oxygen for that long, you're not going to come back the same. But those words echo inside me. And it really is not haunting. It's more, I think, holy, actually. But it just tells me that, look, I've got more stuff to do. And so I'm very busy creating content right now. The more you write, the less you die. I'm fortunate enough that we have a documentary that's out there that's done very well. Last month, it was seen by 25,000 prisoners because they now have tablets. So our 30-minute documentary is in the hands of people that I never thought would end up watching it. but it's a captive audience, pun intended. You know, and I'm writing stuff. I have content that's being produced even as we speak. I had some slides that I could have got done for you, but they're actually in the proofing process. But I'm just trying to write and create and do things that will outlive me.
How do you integrate risk then with your life? Because now you've got this second chance where it's like, okay, I'm going to try things, I'm going to push myself. So how do you integrate risk into a life of vitality?
Yeah, so I think I used to get a lot of flack because I've climbed mountains all over the world and I've skied to the North Pole. I mean, I've given myself a lot of opportunities to exit the planet early. And I didn't do it on purpose. It was just, I went with the best guides. We went with the best equipment. We went at the best time of the year. But the mountains don't care about you. The mountains are basically math. Eventually, if you keep pushing the envelope and you keep aggregating the percentage, yeah, you're probably going to die up there. And about a third of the people that I used to climb with died in their prime. Avalanches, crevasses, who knows what. Those people, quite frankly, were not afraid of dying. They were afraid of living. So we all had a lot of things in common. We all were trying to exorcise or externalize internal issues externally, which is really a funny way of doing things. There's a lot of people that are obsessed with exercise because they can't make an 18-inch journey out of their head to their heart. So they have to, and it's subliminal, it's subconscious. We don't even realize what we're doing, but we're so obsessed with the external, whether it's adventure, relationships, money, wealth, power, addictions, whatever. We externalize whatever we can't internalize. And so going on an adventure, we don't really realize I'm not really going on an adventure. I'm actually looking for awareness. I'm looking for some type of enlightenment. So I think risk to me is not about escaping life. It's about not allowing life to escape you. That's super critical to have that posture, because otherwise we don't do anything. And it's very interesting. I'm an explorer. I've done stuff that very few people have done, but we're not in the age of exploration anymore. I mean, we just landed another piece of technology on the moon. We haven't been there since 1972, and we're now thinking about Mars and all these other places, but we're not really in an age of exploration anymore. It's not terra incognita. It's more terra firma. We understand things. We've mapped the oceans and the mountains, and now we have telescopes that can go into, billions of light years into time and space. But we've lost that ability to think like an explorer. What was it like to go across America like Lewis and Clark and be the first and have to totally rely on the natives to tell you how to stay alive? Or, like some of the early explorers in the polar regions, they worked with the Inuits because they were the individuals that had the ability to stay alive in extremely harsh conditions. But I think we've lost that ability to think like an explorer because everything is management now. We create so little new things, content. We're just managing stuff. We're shuffling stuff around. And there's a place for that. I'm not a good manager. I'm a creator. I'm a leader. I'm not good in that management space. Some people are, and that's their gift. And that's necessary because somebody has to start something and somebody has to figure out how to implement it. But I think we would do well if we thought more like explorers. Like, what would it look like if we treated our life as like a blue ocean in marketing terms? Or, wow, yeah, we're going to take some arrows, but we get to name the land. Like, think about that. First person to find a mountain, they named that mountain after him, or an ocean. Or what would it look like if you then created an interior geography where instead of just always externalizing, you made your interior geography like your cosmos, your undiscovered country. And you just spent tons of energy trying to get well, not just vital, not just the externals. There's a place for that, for sure. But what would it look like if you got to the place where you became whole? And I think we do a lot of external stuff to try and accomplish that, but that's not the way it works. It always works through a paradox. It's always the opposite of what you think. The true way to climb a mountain is to get down. That's the whole true summit idea. It's not going up, it's going down. It's not so much going out, it's going in. Everything works in a paradox. And I think risk and the near-death experience has taught me that.
Kevin, you talk about 5 C's of well-being that keep you vital. So can you talk through those 5 C's?
Yeah, so part of my story is I lived like in a vehicle for 5 years from untreated trauma. And prior to that, I was a million net worth guy living on a golf course. So I have bandwidth with the guy that lived under the bridge, and I understand the guy that built the bridge. And both of them equally. The 5 C's that we've developed, and they can be contextualized to different contexts. But for us, consciousness is the center. And when I say consciousness, I'm not meaning that you're not sleeping. What I'm talking about is, are you actually like awake on the inside? Are you aware? Are you present? Are you here? Right? Because trauma always kicks you out of your story. It punishes your past. It makes you fear your future, but you're never now. So our biggest thing is you have to find a space, and it's not a place, but you have to find a space within yourself where you can be present in your pain, in your circumstances. You're not thinking too far ahead. You're not thinking too far behind. So it's more about awakening. When you talk about like conversion experiences, most often, and it's irregardless of any world religion, they all kind of say the same thing individually or collectively, that they came to a point of awakening. It was like something that was dormant, that was asleep, that was slumbering inside of them actually became awake. So consciousness is the center. And then from that hubs out our counseling. If I lead any organization, I'm like, you know what? Every single one of you needs to go into therapy like right now. And they're like, well, I don't need to go to Pine Rest. That's just for people that are mentally ill. Nah, life, if you live life on any level, you're going to get hurt. And if you need help from a soul surgeon, is what I tell men, because we worked mostly with men in the faith space before we launched this other endeavor. I just told them, I said, look, you go to war and you get a wound and you get a badge and you come home a hero. Why is it any different than when, instead of going to a physical doctor, you're going to a soul surgeon? You're going to someone that's going to help get some shrapnel out of your soul, get some of these lies that you've been living, these false narratives, these small, silly stories that you're absorbed in because you're not well, you're not seeing things. So counseling is huge. That's becoming aware. And then community is incredibly important. And again, in the faith space, I was talking mostly to men cowboys. We think like the Yellowstone series, big ranch, lots of fences. And if anybody steps over the fence, watch out. We're coming after you because this is our land. This is our territory. But my healing came when I finally began to realize that even though I'm a type A entrepreneur, pretty self-sufficient, I needed people. And when I cracked open my chest and told people my story, all of a sudden other men started telling their stories. And now tens of thousands of men have been impacted by this movement because I just said, you know what? I'm going to do life differently. I'm going to live in a community. I'm not so interested in becoming an anonymous mask poser anymore. I want to become known and I want to know people. And I think that's more about intimacy and about what community actually looks like. And then fourthly is contemplation, which is a fancy word for meditation or simplifying your life, having some aesthetic value where you are distancing yourself from social media, from technology, where you can actually think. I like to say it's where your heart actually does its thinking. And that's a twist on words because some of us just live in a cerebral realm and that's where we kind of park and we're dealing with facts and information. But the true change actually happens when you get out of facts and information and you get into transformation. You get into this space where you're finding that true summit, which we talk about extensively in the documentary, The True Summit. And then the last one, which a lot of us spend, in fact, this is the age and the era that we live in, is the classroom, academic. And there's a place for that. You need to have content, podcasts, listen to people who are smarter than you. Jordan Peterson's coming to, the Van Andel Arena in, I don't know, March 12th. He's a guy that has a lot of gray matter in between his ears, and he does a lot of thinking at a very deep level. Whether you love him or hate him, there's some really transformative stuff there that a lot of people are getting into, and he's speaking their language. As a psychologist, as someone who has dealt with all kinds of issues, that's that space that I'm talking about, is making sure that you're feeding your brain, not just your heart, not just your soul, but are you sharpening your mind? Are you making yourself available and accessible to great, because it's there.
So to review those, so we've got consciousness, correct? Yep. Counseling, community, contemplation, and classroom, which is like the learning piece.
Yeah, and I got a super cool graphic. We're just in the final stages of editing it. I can actually forward it to you, and maybe you can disseminate that to the people that have watched this. But it's
wonderful.
A real...
Yeah, we'll do that. And if people want to get more information and find that, from your website, where can people go? Yeah,
so True Summit LLC. .LLC is actually going to be live in about 2 weeks. They're telling me mid-March. For now, again, it's a faith-based site, but graceexplorations.com is what I'm currently leading and still will lead, but that's more of a faith space. I think the thing that I really want to get across to people is there's 3 stories that we all live in, and so you can look at it as a 3-story house. And I'm writing every day about this. So I'm making a story quiz that will help people answer 25 questions to figure out what story they're living in. Because stories are huge. It's what makes us watch movies, we read books, we watch people. We're fascinated with stories. It helps us to encapture or encapsulate truth in a way that other linear thought processes don't. But most people, I think, stay in their story or your story or my story. And that's where a lot of the hurt is. And that's where the wounds come. And we're trying to figure out who we are. And it keeps us in this adolescent state of living. Now, you never outlive that because it's part of a 3-story house. But if you just stay there, you're just in the basement. Like, you haven't gone into the second floor or the third floor. And the second floor, to me, is our story. And I briefly intimated that in the video that everybody just watched. It's this idea that, hey, Kevin was living his story for a long time, for decades. It's all about me. I've got to figure things out. I was living like an orphan. And then I finally got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's our story. Maybe it's not even really about me. Maybe it's about us. And then the third level, and this is like the Nelson Mandelas and the Martin Luther Kings, transcendent individuals, great souls, right? The Mother Teresas, the Billy Grahams, all these people that are just, wow, they're just transcendent, just enormously generative souls that have graced this planet. And that's where they get into the story. And the story is like beyond all of us. It's the story that guides us. It's where the universal meanings and universal truths play into place. And so I'm trying to answer your original question, what has changed since my near death? I am trying to park my RV in the story. Everything I do, I want to just be like, okay, I want this to be the big story. I want this to be about the story, because I'm already bored with my story. And I've lived a long time now in our story. But boy, if I can guide people to the story, so you transcend from all the hurts in your own story to healing in our story, which is community, all the 5 C's that we talked about. But when you get into that third level, the upper level of this 3-story house, that's where you start helping people. And I think we do a disservice to people that just say, hey, just start helping people. These people are like bleeding all over the place. They need help. Like someone who is not doing well, you don't yank them out of the hospital. You're like, no, just get well. Be patient. Listen to the doctor, take your meds, don't pull these IVs out. And I think a lot of people, again, we externalize, but when you get to a place where you're helping people and you can't even help yourself from helping people, it's because you're well. It's because you're living a life of wholeness, and you don't have to drive yourself towards this out of some guilt or religious shame-based process system. It's more of, yeah, I'm doing well enough where I like to help people. I want to go back, kind of like a soldier going back to a POW camp. I want to help other people get out. And that's beauty of storytelling, is your story sets other people free.
In your story matters. So Kevin, I'm going to pull up another of our interviews, because we have 3 interviews of people leading very vibrant lives, and then I'm bringing you back up with Dr. Mishra, and we're going to have a little final conversation. So stay tuned, and we're going to show our next video here.
But many of us are always trying to figure out, how we can continue to enjoy the quality of life that we know is going to make changes. It's going to simply because, we're aging, but we, at least for the people that I'm familiar with, many of us are continually to pursue the passions that they've had.
So Dr. Mishra and Kevin, I have you back on, and I want to just wrap up with both of you. Can you share some final thoughts and some takeaways? And we do have one question also. So before you get into your final thoughts and takeaways, the question comes from Joanne, and she said, I often expect too much of myself. I've always been an overachiever and very goal-oriented. How do you manage all of that to stay joyful and vital when you're like probably your own worst critic?
Oh, I might jump in on that one, because I heard a good answer to that. And this is from a friend of mine who's an orthopedic surgeon, and she does a lot of things. She's a wife, a mother, excellent athlete, takes care of a lot of sports teams. And she has decided that she is not going to apologize anymore for being a high capacity person. Okay. Because sometimes people get, oh, I'm doing all these things and I'm just, what am I doing? Number one, sometimes people can just get a lot done, and you may be one of those high capacity people. The other thing I suggest to maintain your sense of vitality is to push pause and never apologizing for wanting to nourish yourself. Now, that could be with some meditation, prayer, exercise, going out with your friends, going to, some sort of concert or something, but don't apologize for being a high capacity person, and push pause once in a while when you are a high capacity person to nourish yourself. Those are my answers.
Yeah, I love that. And it's we can get so wrapped up in saying yes to everything that we don't say yes to ourselves. So I love that. Just, don't apologize for taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I ditto the doctor.
Right. So, okay. So let's start, Kevin. So final thoughts, or what's a takeaway?
Again, going back to paradox, I think the way to vitality is through death. If you accelerate to a worst case scenario and then you rewind from there, it takes all the pressure off. And if you can find that space where you can hold on to life loosely and enjoy the present moment and be well in the moment, I just think that is the key to vitality. It's a fun thing. We figured this out in the mountains. You're never closer to life than when you're on the edge of death. And so I think sometimes we have to get into this space where, yeah, we're okay with that. Because I believe it's only a door. And if you can reconcile yourself with that and deal with that probability, which we all will eventually face, I think that is going to create a vital life, and you won't have to drive yourself towards that. It'll just be a natural result.
All right. And Dr. Mishra, how about you? What are your takeaways?
So I just wanted to share, because we talked about purpose for a second. It took me a couple years to boil down my purpose to 8 words or less, which is what I try to teach my students. And that is to optimize vitality one person at a time.
Yeah.
I truly believe in that as my mission, my purpose for being on the planet. It's why I've produced over 400 posts and podcasts on the Vitality Explorer Substack site. I am in search of a crew, a community of people who want to join me on my exploration for the rest of my life about vitality. So I welcome you to join me there. There's just back to that statement that I made. It seems kind of silly, but if everybody can just look in that mirror and bet on yourself to be your most vital person for however long you have left, your vitality will rise.
Yeah, that's good.
And Dr. Mishra, we'll have your like the challenges that you offered at the beginning. We'll have those in the comment section. Where can people connect with you?
So I'll give everybody my personal email. That's am@daretobevital. All right. So I don't. If anybody has questions, not medical questions, please. If you want to come see me for your knee or shoulder, I'm happy to see you in my office. But am@daretobevital. That's another place where I put up some stuff. Vitality Explorers on Substack is where most of it goes. And I really want to thank you, Jennifer, for reaching out to me after that conference in Las Vegas. I have huge, deep Michigan roots, and I really appreciate the opportunity to present on the Michigan AARP webinar. And delightful to meet you as well, Kevin. And I've learned a lot from your journey. So thank you for participating with me today.
Well,
thank you both.
We appreciate it. And go blue, right?
Oh yes, definitely go blue. Undergrad and med school at Michigan.
Yeah. I have a son who is a Michigan alumni. And Kevin, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, probably, in the next 2 weeks, TrueSummit.LLC is the place, or just go to Grace Explorations. There's all kinds of email addresses and everything on there that they can get a hold of us. But yeah, we'd love to connect with your viewers, and just to let them know that, the golden years can be your best years. You have so much to offer. You have so much collective wisdom. Don't squander it. Utilize it. There's people that want to hear what you have to say, and living a vital life is part of that.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. Don't squander it. So we have another question that came in from Shirley in the last few minutes that we have here. We're going to wrap up with the question. She asks, any suggestions on how to find vitality to get rid of things, right? We live in a materialistic world. So how do we get rid of things and all the accumulations of life and get rid of that stuff?
You want to jump on that one, Kevin? I got to stop. Go ahead.
Well, when I lived in a vehicle for 5 years, I didn't have a lot of stuff, and I had to simplify. And I just think I don't even know if there's a simple answer to that. I think that the outer clutter is indicative of inner. So I would start with the internal. Just simplify things in your life. I'm really big on drawing up a life mission statement. Every corporation, every nonprofit has a mission statement. I think the thing that will help people to say no, which is really getting rid of the clutter. It's the stuff, we externalize it again, but it's more of an internal journey. But if you can develop some type of mission statement, I was fortunate enough to go on some calling retreats where they actually spent 3 or 4 days. It was an intensive, everything from story mapping to vision mapping to the things that it was an incredible discovery process of helping you to walk away from a 3-day experience with a personal mission statement. So now when stuff comes by, and there's a lot of content that I'm dealing with on a daily basis, I know what to say no to. But if you don't have a personal mission statement, our doctor friend already mentioned it. He has those statements. It takes time to write those things. But if you don't write those things down and put them somewhere where they're visual, you're going to say yes to everything. And you're like yard sale. It'll be crazy. You have to know who you are, what you're good at, your passions. Calling is a unique animal. It's the thing in your life. I call it the golden thread, but it's the thing in your life that's always on. And it can transcend your assignments, your jobs, people that come and go in your life. It's the thing that you are uniquely born to do in this world. And when you know what that is, like Mark Twain said, the 2 most important days are the day you're born and the day you find out why. When you find out your why, you're unstoppable.
So Shirley, I have a quick thought for you. This is like stealing a little bit from Marie. I think her name's Marie Kondo, and that is just trying to find the joy in whatever you've accumulated. By the way, there's two things that I need to try to clear out in my world. One are all the material things that I have, and some of those things might bring me joy, but not bring my family or other people joy. And I could be a little bit of a hoarder. So I definitely have a problem here that needs to be worked on. But I think the other thing, we didn't have time to talk too much about this, is to clear out your head.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been working on in the last year or so is just forgiveness. Forgiveness for other people and forgiveness for yourself.
Yeah.
So in the context of clearing out your garage or your bedroom or your closet, yeah, if it doesn't bring you joy or you haven't worn it in a year or it's got more dust or mold on it, throw it away or give it away. But then get into your head and clear out that stuff that you've been hoarding for your whole life. Put it away, give it up, forgive yourself and forgive others. It's a massive thing that we could do a whole webinar on.
Yeah. Well, Kevin and Dr. Mishra, I thank you so much. I think we could talk about this for hours because there's so much here and it's so deep and we could just continue talking. More questions have come in. We don't have time to get to them, but would you be willing to go into the comment section and answer them for people?
We'll do our best.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So hopefully some answers will be coming there. And then AARP also has a Blue Zones Vitality game that you can play. We've got the link that we'll be posting there in the comment section. So be sure to click on that and you can actually have a little fun playing a vitality game. So to our viewers, thank you for being here today. This is going to be here on Facebook. You can watch it again and you can share it with others. There's a lot of nuggets of great wealth and wisdom to take away from this. And again, to our amazing speakers, Kevin and Dr. Mishra, thank you for joining us today. And we are going to leave today with one final video of an older adult who's talking about vitality. So thank you and have a great day.
I think it's important to step out of your comfort zone. It's so easy to get, that little box where I feel comfortable. And for me, the most vibrant parts of my life is when I've taken a risk. And that risk it doesn't have to be a physical risk. It's more of an emotional risk, like going up to somebody and saying hi. For some people, that's a real big risk. For me, that's just everyday things. But I see myself as an initiator. And where some people, the conversation isn't going to happen unless I start the conversation. And for example, I play pickleball. And pickleballs are great for a lot of reasons, but one of them is you're constantly changing partners and opponents. And I'm always saying to people, were you raised in Grand Rapids? That's a great opening line, and it opens up all kinds of doors. And people, I find that people love to tell their stories, and so it just means that somebody needs to ask the conversation and get it going. So that's to me, being that initiator and taking that risk is the key for me to live a vital life.